Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Harvest Baptist Association and our March 2023 edition of our third Thursday training. And every month we do our best to bring to our churches and to our pastors, staff members, people and tools and ministries and resources that we think might be able to help you further discover your calling and your mission, and then be able to fulfill that, to walk in that. And so we trust that what we've got for you today is going to help to do that, specifically in regards to missions and students. And so I want to welcome Wes Searcy. Wes is the vice president at East West, and he'll share in just a minute what they do. I've known Wes for some time now, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. So, Wes, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us just a little bit about yourself. Give us a brief, background, family, ministry history, those kind of things.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for letting me be with you guys today. Man, praise the Lord. One of the best things about me, other than my salvation, is my awesome wife, Colleen. Dave knows her and knows how lucky a guy I am. And she's a great woman. And Colleen and I've been married. We'll be married for 30 years this October. And Dave was at the wedding. That's a whole nother story. There. Oh man. And we've got two great boys. Sam is a senior at Dallas Baptist University. He's going to graduate with a music degree in May. And then I've got a senior in high school, going to graduate and go get a music education degree at Texas Tech University. He made the decision, Dave. He's going to be in the going band and
guns up.
Get your guns up. That's right. That's where my wife went to college as well. So we've got some history there. Nice. So, long story short, during college, I thought I was going to go in the car business like my dad, maybe, and I was going to coach, and worked at a church for a couple of summers, a Baptist church in Arkansas, and Lord had other plans. He said, "This is what I've been getting you ready for," and initial call to the next generation, just have a real burden for kids and them really knowing the truth of the gospel, knowing Jesus and loving him and being on mission with him. And so I've been basically doing next generation ministry for almost 40 years, 16 years as a student pastor, 7 years as an executive pastor. And then in 2005, almost 18 years ago, me and a friend started a missions organization called Next Worldwide. And our passion was to engage students in the Great Commission missions, where they're a part of proclaiming the gospel, making disciples, and multiplying churches around the world. Where they're not just going on a trip and coming home and checking off a box, but they can look back and go, the Lord really let me be a part of a strategic work to help start new churches in a region of the world, and then come home on mission. I'll tell you more about that here in just a little while. But so grateful to have been doing that for 18 years. About 4 years ago, the organization I got to be a part of helping start came under the umbrella of a much larger organization called East West. And East West has about 350 staff, about 150 deployed in countries around the world, and unreached nations, reaching unreached people groups. I'm a part of a mobilization team that mobilizes students and adults and resources into those harvest fields to help make disciples, share the gospel, and multiply churches throughout those regions of the world. I just got back from Guatemala this weekend, out in the mountains in remote Guatemala, walking the mountainsides literally and going hut to hut, sharing the gospel with a bunch of high school kids here from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It was amazing, just amazing work. I'm getting chills as I'm thinking about it. So cool that we get to be a part of it, that these students got to be a part of it. So that's kind of where we are right now, and excited to be a part of this with you today. So.
Yeah, thanks. And for those watching, just full disclosure, I've actually taken a trip with Wes when he was still with Next Worldwide before they were absorbed into East West. But we went to Costa Rica and had an incredible trip there, and doing exactly what he said, just equipping, mobilizing students doing some, leadership training, but also training them how to share the gospel, and then putting that into practice, partnering with the local church down there. So really tremendous. Hopefully, as Wes shares, Wes, you'll be able to maybe even talk a little bit more about what you guys do and how that, how that happens. But let's go back to the beginning. You were in local church ministry for a while.
Yeah.
And then you transitioned from local church to parachurch.
Yeah.
So what was that? What opportunity did you see that either the local church, I don't want to say wasn't doing, but maybe couldn't do, or that could be done more effectively, that you could assist churches more effectively from coming alongside local churches? What was that motivation? Walk me through that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, briefly, there was a personal journey, obviously. I was at a great church, Baptist church in Denver, Colorado, that had imploded a few years before the pastor had gotten there. And when he got there, his vision wasn't to fill the building back up. It was a 3,000 seat worship center that had gone down to about 400 people. But his vision was to multiply churches up and down the Front Range of Colorado and see a kingdom movement, not just a church growth movement. And when I heard that vision, I was at a great church in Florida there with Dave, and I just saw this vision of church planting and multiplication. And he wanted the student ministry to be a part of that. And I just began to see a different kind of paradigm of kingdom ministry than I had ever had before. And I've loved the experiences and the places I was. I've had great experiences prior to that. That was part of it. And then just starting to hear more about God's work around the world, hearing about, Matthew 24:14 just captured my heart. And the gospel of this kingdom will be proclaimed in every nation as a witness in every nation, and then the end will come. Jesus said there'll be a lot of things happen in the end times. A lot of bad things happen, earthquakes and pestilence and wars, rumors of wars, but that's not the end. Those are the birth pangs, he said, leading up to the end. But this will be the end. The gospel is proclaimed in every ethne. And I thought, why aren't we talking more about this? We got to talk about this in our churches. I wasn't discipled that way. And then just getting to go over with a group of students and just seeing the darkness, but also seeing how big our God is and how he's going to redeem people from all of those nations that are so dark and seem so hopeless right now, that he will redeem from every nation. So I thought, I want to be in on that. Somehow in my vapor of a life, I want to be in on that. And so it was just this perfect storm of the nations and church planning and students that kind of, you see in a Venn diagram, that just became this vision that me and a friend had to launch Next Worldwide. And so it was hard because I do love the local church so much, but honestly, we all utilize resources to help us do what we do. And I thought I would love to be the best friend of a local church. I had taken a group of 70 people. This wasn't necessarily a good idea, but I did it. I took a group of 70 students and adults to the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico in the summer of 1998. And it was awesome and awful. So it was awesome. We worked with 4 new church plants. The work the kids did was amazing. But it was awful because I had to administrate the whole thing and it almost killed me. And I thought if I'd had someone come to me that week after that trip and say, we can go help you do that same church planning work, but we'll do all the logistics. We'll prepare your kids. We'll go in the field with you. We'll run everything behind the scenes, and we'll even be out there with you doing ministry. I would have said, where do I sign up for that? So this idea of church planning, students, leadership development, evangelism, and what if we can be the best friend and be the person, be the organization that I would have wanted as a local church minister, then let's do that. Now, we will say, just being real frank with you, if I have to be a travel agent only for mission trips, I'm not signing up for that. We provide that as a means of serving the local church, but we're partnering the local church with real church multiplication going on around the world in these regions we go to, real strategies that are in process, and we are a strategic part of that movement of those churches in that area, just like where we were in Guatemala last week. So that was our passion, is we want to be the best friend a servant of the church that I love, that I'm a part of. I'm sitting in my local church right here in one of the prayer rooms they'll let me use today, and just come alongside the church and go, how can we help you do what it is you want to do?
Yeah, and that was one of the things that we saw that motivated us to do that trip. Not only, and I'll say this, not only are you a friend of the local church stateside, but a friend of the local church in that indigenous region. That we're not just doing sort of scattershot evangelism. When we went on that trip, we were partnering with our local church, partnering with a local church there to actually plug people into ongoing ministry
Yeah.
in those places.
It's true. In the early years of when I remember the first fundraising meetings I had, is we just had this idea on a napkin basically, and the Lord just provided through people that caught the vision. I had this little word art, really awful looking little graphic of a little circle over here that said U.S. local church and a circle over here that said international local church, and I drew this bridge, and I said that's who we are. We're going to bridge the local church here with the local church there. And be about building up the local church around the world. So
yeah, well, and I'm sure you've seen, and I'm sure our people who are watching this have probably seen parachurch local church relationships that are unhealthy. Several months back, we actually had one of our local FCA guys here who really is a great model of a healthy relationship between parachurch and local church, where the parachurch actually serves the local church, and I'd put you guys in that category as well. You know, no one would say that the Apostle Paul was a competitor with the local church or an enemy of the local church, because he served. He went church to church to church, you know, serving those local churches. And I see you guys in that sort of that same vein there. So, in your experience in the local church, and certainly in your role now serving local churches, what are some of the, I don't know if I want to call them shortcomings, but just maybe challenges or limitations in ways that you have seen local churches approach short-term missions?
Yeah. You know, again, I love the local church. So we're real careful at East West and on our team at Next for years. We're like, we don't want to be this critic of the local church. Man, none of us have ever done it all right.
Right.
So this isn't bad mouthing the local church. I mean,
for sure.
The church, and I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm just saying that the church is Jesus' bride, right? So I'm not gonna, somebody starts bad mouthing my bride, I'm asking them to step outside and practice falling down. I'll be out there in a few minutes, you know. But but I do think that if we're honest with ourselves, if we're really willing, and I don't know that everyone's really willing to do this. If we're really, really willing to spiritually, intellectually, however you want to describe it, analyze how are we really matching up with what the Bible says is Great Commission missions. There have been some good resources put out. Some of you may be familiar. If you're not, I would highly recommend reading the book When Helping Hurts. And there's just some really, it's really compelling. It's very convicting of how many times, and even with the best intentions, we can wreak a lot of havoc in places around the world by going in and doing some things that we think are helping, and they really end up creating a lot of problems for the movement of the gospel and the name of Jesus in the church. We had a local church here, a large church in the area, that invited us to go step into a partnership that they already had, and asked us to try to help them turn that partnership from something that was very turned inward on itself and start turning it outward to multiplying churches. We agreed to enter into it for a season and see if it would work. And they had gotten themselves so upside down, I guess you'd say, financially with these people, created such dependency, and there are several other layers to it, that just found out through a couple of years of mobilizing teams down there, they weren't willing to change and to start looking outward. They were doing good things there in the community, but the church eventually had to slowly pull out of that. They created so much dependency. And so I think that if we're not careful, we will create a dependency or, and I do, as careful as I want to be, I think that one of my favorite proverbs that's not a biblical proverb is the beginning of wisdom is to call something by its right name.
Mm.
If we can't call things what they are, then we can't ever deal with the real problem. And I do think that sometimes we get so attached emotionally to a cause or to a group of people that we lose sight of the strategic impact that we can have and the healthier long-term impact we can have for the sake of the gospel, the multiplication of disciples, and multiplication of churches. And so I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I think that when I take a look at the Bible, and there's a missiologist that I enjoy reading right now, Christopher Wright, and he said he used to teach conferences and a seminary class at King's College in England. His name's Christopher Wright. I don't know if I mentioned his name. And he used to call it the biblical basis of missions. And he said, but he goes, you can create a biblical basis for everything that you have in your church, right? He said, but when I started reading the Bible and really understanding it, he goes, I quit calling it the biblical basis of missions and called it the missional basis of the Bible. He said, because the Bible is a missional phenomenon. That what the Bible is, it's God's disclosure of himself to us. He's telling us who he is and what he is like and what he is doing and what he's inviting us into. And when you read the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation, and you see it's not just a New Testament, the Great Commission and our mission is not, it's all throughout the Old Testament. God's declaring every family of the earth, every nation of the earth will be blessed through you. Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. We put that on a coffee mug and we stop it right there. Why? It says, I will be exalted among the nations, right? Yeah. So his heart is for his glory to be displayed in every nation. And the reason that missions exist is because worship doesn't, right? And so that's, a quote from a John Piper book. And I just love that idea that missions will be no more one day. And I want to be a part of seeing that happen. And my prayer is, you've hit a hot button here with me, Dave, and so I don't want to go too long.
No, you're good.
But my prayer is that the local church, if it's not right now, will really evaluate, are we really engaged with our people in the Great Commission?
Yeah.
Not are we sending money, not are we going on mission trips, but are we really strategically engaged in the Great Commission? And so I thought, instead of cursing the darkness, we decided to light a light, instead of being, moaning about the condition of youth today, or, the church, are they really involved in the missions the way God wants them to be? Let's just light a light and let's create opportunities and stand up on a desk somewhere and say, hey, and let's go to the nations. Let's multiply churches. Let's move the needle when it comes to the gospel being proclaimed in every nation. And so, I'll stop there, but that's just a real passion of ours, is to serve the local church that way.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and not knowing that you were going to say exactly that. This morning, I actually had a thought and posted it that if you care enough to complain about something, but don't care enough to do something about it, you either need to care more or you need to care less. And
that's a great point.
and so you cared enough to do something about it, and so that's a good deal. I also thought of kind of this idea that I think a lot of our pastors, we're primarily small rural churches. I think a lot of those pastors and churches really have a heart that they want to do something. They have good intentions, but I wouldn't lead a group into a foreign country where I didn't speak the language without an interpreter. And so, in the same way, you guys have become sort of an interpreter of the idea of missions to help churches maybe who don't know how to say things in the right language or don't know how to put those things into place. You provide that tool and that opportunity, and do something like you said. You know, the trip you took with all those kids that it nearly killed you. That you had somebody to provide those tools and those resources for you, and so you've become that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that for sure. So how do you and your organization help to meet those challenges in maybe specific ways? Like, what do you tell us a little bit about the your strategy, the trips you take, what you do?
Yeah. Yeah. So our strategy really is to connect with ongoing church planting movements in different parts of the world. We have about 150 staff deployed around the world that work in a lot of these countries. Kind of what I loved and what really one of the many things that drew me to come be a part of East West was I would call it the secret sauce is not in all of our North Americans that are around the world, and they're wonderful people doing great work, but it's in our 14,000 national partners. About four, you know, I think we recently kind of said did a explored with our partners around the world and go, how many do we really have? Because we don't want to throw out these evangelistic numbers, you know. And we're real big on that with our evangelism numbers too. I won't get into that now, but we want to have integrity with what we're reporting that's actually happening. And so we have, of our 14,500 national partners, probably only 200 of them know the name East West. We have layers of leadership training in these places around the world where the people that are out on the front lines, they're there because they love Jesus, they love the Great Commission, they love people, they want to see disciples multiplied and churches multiplied, and they're just doing their work because God's called them to it, not because they're connected to some logo. And so very few, like I said, just a few hundred of our national partners even know the name East West, and they know that they're a part of a strategy, a real plan. And so they have layers of leadership under them where they're just training leaders, multiplying churches and disciples. So that's a big part of what we do. The team that I'm a part of, I'm over the mobilization strategy. It's one of our 4 core strategies of East West. And so it's evangelism, mobilization, equipping, and multiplying are our 4 core strategies. So I get to oversee the mobilization strategy. And the way we do it is we serve what's going on the field. So we're not throwing a dart at a map and going, hey, let's go there and do something good. What we're doing is we're asking the field leaders, where do you have need for short-term teams to come in to really, I'll use this analogy a lot to really help you move the needle. Like you're trying to move churches, you're trying to multiply churches. Where can we really be of help? And what times of year are best for you? How many people would be best to come? And we'll come over and serve with you guys. And so, we had about 140 requests for trips last year. And we're going to be able to fill about 90 of them this year. Now, that's a win, especially coming out of the pandemic. We're way beyond what we thought we would be, but we fill that with student and adult trips. And so what we do is we come alongside local church, Christian organizations, even Christian schools, excuse me, and we provide that conduit of to mobilize you to the nations. And so many of our churches even adopt that local ministry there personally and keep going back and keep supporting that local ministry going on there. So our interest is not to keep being this middleman, but to connect churches and organizations to a work on the field. We even have an opportunity for people that have been with us to go, hey, I'd like to just lead my own church over there. We send you through some training just to know how to do things, kind of the way that'll make it a successful from recruiting to registration to ministry on the field and what happens after the trip. We can train you to lead your own church to do that. And so that you're partnering with a real work on the ground. And so Matter of fact, I have to be real careful because we are real careful about saying country names like that because most
Mm,
of our work is in country. So you guys would too. We're not out publicizing. We don't use social media to talk specifically about countries.
yeah.
And we have a great part of our, we have a great security guy that used to be with the CIA and Secret Service that runs security for us. So we're real careful about publicizing that. But we can connect you with a real work on the ground that you can
Mm,
adopt and say, hey, we want to invest here and we want to help them move the, so, and we don't sell that to people. We don't try to get everybody that goes with us to invest in that field. We can continue to just be a conduit. I could continue to mobilize this church for years down the road, or you can choose to adopt a place on your own. So those are some opportunities, if that helps answer the question.
yeah, for sure. Sure, that's great. Um, in talking about specifically about students and mobilizing students, obviously every new generation sort of gets tagged with some criticism and those kind of things. It seems like um, each successive generation sort of dog piles on the one that comes after them.
Exactly.
But what do you see as the priorities in engaging the current student population? Like, what are the unique um, opportunities to really? What is it that they need, and how do you give that to them?
Yeah. There are some unique things that this generation has that previous generations don't have
Mm,
that uniquely qualify them to go. There's a more global mindset with them. Technology. I actually spent some time yesterday afternoon with our vice president of digital strategies, and some of the work they have going on around the world that's fueling discipleship movements in some of our specific regions is mind blowing. Uh,
mm,
Students, they just speak that language. Dave, I know, I'm just a little bit older than you, but our generation would be called digital immigrants.
yeah.
You know, this generation, they're digital natives. They know the language. There's no how do you use this, and I didn't know you could do that. Uh, they just speak the language, and they're just a lot more mobile and agile, and they are a lot more collaborative. They don't
Mm,
have these silos built into their paradigm of the world. And so where some of the things that we would look at would go, the internet and social media and all of YouTube and all this stuff has made things just so wheels off, and it has. And man, we have to disciple our kids to have integrity and to follow Jesus and to value that more than the
mm,
freedoms to do whatever you want to do. But you can flip that around and go, there's so much knowledge and so much opportunity and so much mindset that uniquely qualifies them to go and to do and to go to the nations. Um, you know, Honestly, one of the things, I was with a group of 9th through 11th graders last week, 9th through 12th graders in Guatemala, and there were several of them that were just struggling with how to even have a conversation. But that's part of the vision of our next gen, is
yeah.
that we're trying to kick them out of the nest. They won't learn unless they're given an opportunity. And we
Yep.
listen to them share the gospel, and we jump in and help a little bit. We finish and we coach them a little bit. And the next time they're more confident. The next time they're more
Mhm.
confident. By day 4, they're running to the next house going, we only have 30 minutes left. We got to go over here.
Huh.
And you see this transformation in them. So there's some struggles with conversations and things like that, but that's part of what we want to, the problem we want to solve. And so I think kids are way more willing to go than authorities are willing to let them go.
Mm, yeah.
So I do have to come through the front door on some things and
Yeah.
say that probably among the biggest challenges we run into is just paralyzing fear.
Mm,
Parents, church leaders, how much does it cost? Is it safe? Now we know those things. If we didn't think about those things and we didn't have uh, and we didn't give attention and address those things, then we wouldn't last for very long
Yeah.
as a ministry. One, we care about kids deeply. I was on the phone with a mom of a college student last night who's considering going with me to Guatemala, and she's just gripped with fear. And
Mm.
I tried to, as graciously as I can, say to her, I couldn't guarantee any kid's safety if we took a mission trip to Fort Worth or Sacramento or whatever. But I can tell you, we've been doing this for 18 years and we care deeply. And there are just some basic things you do and don't do when you're in any place in the world.
Mm.
Places you don't go, times of day you don't go, and we take a lot of measures to do that. And I think that we get to use a phrase I've heard recently, wrapped around the axle on things that are really not to be concerned about as much, and that is God's provision financially to be able to do it, and valuing God's will above my own need to control and keep things safe. And so, we've never done an international trip, so we can't go. I mean, there are just all kinds of excuses that are more made by the flesh than really prayed through and thought through. And I really believe that we hold kids back from incredible opportunities for a trajectory change in their life when we hold them back because of our own fears.
Yeah.
And so that's I'm just going to come through the front door and just be honest with you. It pains me, it burdens me how fearful we are.
Yeah.
And let our fear hinder a kid's experience and growth. I'm here at my local church, and I just spent the last 30 minutes before this meeting with a middle school minister. As a high school junior and senior, he went with me to Romania twice, and then he came back and interned for us and went to Kenya with us as an intern. And he just said, "Hey, I just want to tell you, I so appreciate what you guys do." And he goes, "I went into Moody Bible College, and then he went on to seminary after that." And he goes, "I can't imagine having not had that global perspective and that ability to proclaim the gospel and going into college and seminary." And he goes, "I know so many people say, I wish I had had that when I was a kid." He goes, "I'm so grateful I had it."
Yeah.
It made all the difference in the world in me. And so he said, my perspective on life and values and things I wanted to do with my life completely changed because I had a global perspective on who God is and what he's up to. And that's our desire, is to see God change the trajectory of a kid's life for his glory.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what it sounds like is that you, on the one hand, you're capitalizing on the strengths and unique mindsets that this current generation has, while at the same time trying to sort of shore up maybe some places that they're not as experienced, and also on the parent and leadership side, really trying to reassure and give them a mission or a vision for the greater mission. I know the answer to this question, but I want them to hear it from you, because like I said, we're primarily an association of smaller rural churches.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have to have a youth group or a group of any certain size to be able to take advantage of the resources that you guys provide?
No. Now, there's a two-part answer to that. We don't take individual high school kids, but we do take smaller groups. Okay. We are actually set up. A lot of people go, "Well, we can't go because we're in between youth ministers, or we don't have." I go, "Well, that's why we set things up the way we did.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a youth minister to go with us." The way we're set up is to engage a leader in a local church that wants to mobilize students. Yeah. And you can jump like Dave's group did. They jumped on a group with 2 other churches, and I think there were 34 of us in Costa Rica on that trip, and it was a great trip. And so we just need someone in the local church to take ownership. Hey, I'm going to lead it, and this is what we do. We want to make it as simple as we can for the local church to do this. Yep. So we would say to the leader, Dave's going to lead the trip. We go, "Dave, if we'll do a group agreement that says, hey, we're going on these dates and we're going to make this commitment, a kind of a group deposit to hold our spot, and let's do it. And we set what we call the critical meeting, is what we call our trip information meeting. We'll do that sometime in the fall. And we'll either by video conference or in person show up and speak to everybody that's considering going. And we say, if you can treat that like it's a youth camp meeting, like you're trying to get as many people there to give them information, to sell them on, hey, you need to go to youth camp with us. Invite as many people as you can. Let us come in and share the vision, how it works, registration, safety, schedule, all the things. We have a little booklet that we cover in 45 minutes, and rarely is there a question at the end of it, because we know what people are wanting to know. And so we say, if you can have a well-attended trip information meeting, and then we'll start the registration process. Kids will start registering, and we have 3 simple deadlines. We have a registration deadline, $250 deposit. We have a travel cost deadline a few months later, so we can buy the airline tickets. And then we have a final cost deadline. So 45 days out, just make sure we have everything and ready to go. But we tell the youth leader, if you can just have a great trip information meeting, do some minimal follow-up, because we send a series of 17 emails between the trip information meeting and the day before we leave for the trip. So we're communicating constantly. Remember this deadline, remember to get this form in, here's some things you can pray for in the place we're going. And then we created a 5-week pre-trip training that is turnkey for you guys. The leader just watches it ahead of time, watches that session, then goes through it with the kids. We have a workbook they fill out. They practice sharing the gospel. They learn how to work in another culture, or how to work with a translator, do's and don'ts in other cultures. And if they'll do all of that, then we just ask the group leader, if you'll just get them through that training, get them to practice sharing the gospel as much as they can before we go, and then show up at the airport on time. We take the ball and we'll run with it. So we send 2 staff on every trip with you, and we're out there on the field with you. One of the things that we created, the first year we started Next, and we did our first trips in 2006. And we thought, boy, we know that God's going to do a lot through these kids, but think of all he's going to stir in them. And we thought, we didn't want this picture to happen. We're at the airport at the end of the trip, and we're waving at the kids as they leave, and we're going, hey, I know God stirred a lot in your heart. I hope you figure it out. So we said, you know what, let's create an on-field experience for them that'll give them some tracks to run on when they go home. So we developed what we call the Catalyst Leadership Experience. And we have 2 45-minute windows a day where we sit down and talk about, what does it mean to be on mission? What does it mean to be a leader? So we take this idea of missional and leadership off the bumper sticker, and we talk about what is it and how do you actually do it. And then, like we did last Friday morning with the kids before we came home, I sat down that last morning. They filled out what they call a Live the Mission action plan. It's a 6-step action plan for, this is specifically what I'm going to do when I go home to be on mission. And so that's kind of what that looks like. And so you don't have to have a youth pastor. You can have just a committed leader that'll come and bring the amount of adult leaders that we need per kid. And it's so turnkey that it just, once we flip the switch, it just runs. And so, again, we'd love to serve you. And you don't have to have a big group. You can add on with another group. You don't have to have a youth minister. You have someone that says, hey, I'll take the ball and run with this group. And it just works.
Yeah. Let me just real briefly share our story. Wes, I don't know if you remember, Wes came and did the informational meeting, and we had probably a half dozen students. I'm the pastor, and then we had a part-time student minister, Tyler Burdett was here at the time, and had about maybe a half dozen, 8 students who were in, and they started the fundraising process. And over the course of that, between that time and the final deadline, it had actually dwindled down to 1 student. And I contacted Wes. I'm like, we got 1 kid. And Wes was like, does he want to go? I said, yeah, he wants to go. So I told the student, if you will raise your money, Tyler and I will go with you in the greatest student to leader ratio in the history of mission trips.
He was covered.
2 adult leaders, 1 student. But man, we went and we partnered with those other groups, and it was life-changing for him, and it was transformational for us too. So I'll just say this to, if you're a pastor who's watching, who maybe you don't even have a youth minister, maybe you just have a few kids in your church who might be interested in this. One of the things that we major on in our association is cooperation and partnerships. And so, if maybe we have a couple from one church and a couple from another church, through associates, through our associational partnerships, we can figure out a way if you're committed to do that. So please get in touch with us, get in touch with Wes. Just one final question here for you. Whether or not a church chooses to partner with your ministry, which I would definitely encourage them. We'll put some contact info, in the notes here, in the comments. But what are some steps that even churches like our churches, like small rural churches, could take to get their students and people to think missionally, to think in terms of God's mission, the nations, to think in that way?
Yeah. When I was early in my youth ministry years, I ended up on staff at a couple of churches that did a lot of really good things, and I just kind of adopted some of the things they were doing. But as I started thinking myself, what is it that really, if we're going to be honest about what does it mean to be on mission, then I'm going to look at 2 Corinthians 5, I think, is a great microcosm of the whole of Scripture. That little phrase at the beginning of verse 18 in 2 Corinthians 5, right after the celebration of, if any man is in Christ, he's a new creation, old is gone. That little phrase says all of this is from God. I thought, what does it say? It's talking about what just happened and about this next thing I'm getting ready to tell you, And he goes into those next 3 verses just talking about being reconciled through Christ and now being entrusted with the message of reconciliation. And the capstone being that call to be an ambassador and approved spokesperson for the kingdom of light in the domain of darkness, there in verse 20. And so what I would encourage to do is go, how can we do that? How can we take that off of the coffee mug, ambassadors for Christ, but go, how are we going to actually do that? And so I think there are a couple of things really that are important as a part of being an ambassador. One is speaking on behalf of the kingdom, speaking the message of the kingdom, and not soft selling the kingdom, right? Lowering the bar for the kingdom. A real passion of mine early in youth ministry was I'm never going to tell my kids, you need to do or be this as a disciple, and not train them how to do it. And when I say train, I don't mean a drive-by guilting sermon. I mean, we're going to teach you how to do it. We're going to kick you out of the nest and have you do it. We're going to coach you. We're going to teach you. We're going to help you do it better. And so I was committed that I was never going to tell students, you need to be able to share your faith, and not train them how to do it. And so, and one of the best opportunities to do that is on the mission field. Train them how to do it, go somewhere and get out and proclaim the gospel. And I think also the idea of making disciples. What does it really mean to make disciples? That's part of what we teach on the field with our catalyst training too. And so where can we go where there's a movement of disciple making and really, I would say, church planning. When I first had the opportunity, before I even thought about an organization like this, or even knew one existed that was similar to this, I just made our summer mission trips. We're going to be helping church planners. And so we went to St. Louis, and we went to Carson City, Nevada, and we went to Merida, Mexico, and the places that we started going were all to come alongside church planners and go, how can we come in and help you move the needle? And in that, let our kids come and help proclaim the gospel and connect people to your new church. So I would say, just ask honestly, how can we be Great Commission missions people, and then train your kids to do it? And it doesn't have to be through us. Obviously, we're passionate about doing it and we want to help. But think about ways that you can help these kids really understand what the Great Commission is and really know how to do it before they go off to college and are potentially out from under the umbrella of influence of your church.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Wes, just want you to know, personally, you know how much I love you and appreciate you and the way that you invested in me. But even beyond that, just to see the way that you are committed to and investing in the kingdom
Mm.
through local churches. It's just an encouragement to see that. And if you're watching this, I could not um, be more excited to commend Wes and East West to you. Um, Check them out, see if that might be a good fit for you and for your church, and hopefully that'll bear fruit for the kingdom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
appreciate you being with us. Appreciate your words and your encouragement and just the info and inspiration.
Well, thank you for time with you, Dave. I love you, brother, and grateful for you and admire, man, your faithfulness there for so long and serving, loving those people well in Nocona. And thank you, pastors and leaders, for time with you today. I would be honored to speak with you. If you ever have any questions, and I know Dave knows how to get in touch with me at East West. And well, it's been an honor to be with you. Thanks for the time.
Awesome.